So you don't want to really have them like this isn't optimal. It's just like a pragmatic solution to not having them in your rally point.
But you want them split up all over the place, obviously, right?
Yeah, optimally
like,
you'd want them.
I find myself with large clumps of Overlords against CVT more than anything.
Okay, and you guys know how to like split them, right? Like how I just did, where you just do that with the shift click.
Yeah, yeah. You send them all spot, then you start splitting them.
Yeah, it's the same with Scourge.
Right? Yeah.
So
yeah.
Scourge, I think, is a more relevant example where like, where you'll attack a vessel. So pretend these mutas are vessels. You like do this, and then you click 2 off, and then you do that. Like so, that's what's known as ghosting, where you split them up to the correct amount, so you're not wasting Scourge. It's the same with Overlords, where you just like start ticking them off from here.
Okay, what do you mean? What do you mean by the ghosting?
Oh, by ghosting, I mean so let these hatch. So it takes 2 Scourge to kill a vessel, right?
Yep.
So it's a waste to use 3 or more Scourge to kill it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you attack move 12 Scourge, they'll all target the first vessel that they run into.
Yeah.
So you want to split them up optimally so they're all hitting a different target. So say that these 3 mutas are vessels, so, and I have my Scourge here. If I fly them in and just attack move them here, they're all going to collide on this first one, wasting 4 Scourge.
Yeah.
Right.
So instead, you want to split them up so they hit each vessel independently. So like this first vessel, you'll right-click to attack move on it, then you kill 2, and then you do another 2, and then they hit 3 instead of hitting the first initial one. And then you'll see that on the stream whenever the delay is done. But
okay.
Do you understand?
Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah, it's a lot easier to see it than hear it.
Yeah, than to
like
hear the concept.
I've done that. I've done that same technique.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
that's good because like a lot of Zerg just like fly in them. It's the same with Corsairs too.
Yeah, that's a big problem. I've said it before, but is letting Terran build fucking 12 science vessels and then.
Right, and I mean,
you gotta get the.
It changes too because like once you get plague on your defiler, you can use 1 for each plagued vessel too, so you don't need to use 2 at that point, right? Because it only has 1 health.
Yeah.
Same for Corsairs too. So if you hit a Corsair with a Scourge, it'll do enough damage to its hull, like it'll recover its shields, right? But it'll be damaged enough where only 1 Scourge is required to kill it for the rest of the game. So you guys know that.
Oh.
Right?
Okay. Yeah. No, I always assume once that shit. Okay. Yeah.
No, yeah. So once you hit it once, it does enough damage where both like you only need 1 more to kill it, like regardless of the shields that it has. So that's just a quick tip for ZVP, I guess.
I just figured out, and it's just 1 Scourge for Observer too, eh?
Yeah, just 1 Scourge for Observer.
Yeah. I always assumed for some reason it was 2, so I'd send in 2, and then okay. Just stupid shit, man.
Yeah,
just
I mean that's just like getting used
stupidity.
to the numbers and stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about how you guys should be moving your army around the map. Do you guys have any questions at this point? Because I know we've been going through like a lot of material in terms of like just understanding how you should, or like how to optimally like split your rallies and stuff like that. Any questions? Or no?
So, just a quick question. Like, when you're doing your rally, your initial rally, you want to be on the other side of the bridge or within your side?
Different Zergs do different things. So Savior, I know rallies out here on Fighting Spirit, and I know Effort does it sometimes too. Personally, I always do it here because my rationale is...
Andy, I think you should end the stream. Everteams are watching you now.
Who is?
Everteams.
Oh no, other teams are? Alright, so... here's the big difference, right? So if you're
lucky CPL team, no coach, champ.
If your rally's here and the Terran starts posting up here with siege tanks and shit, like which they do every game in ZVT, if they get to that point, I feel like it's way easier and less clicks to just like move your army back, because you're gonna have a ton of Sunkens here, right? And you're gonna have your drones over here, so like it's easier to just like move them back behind the Sunkens like that, instead of just having your rally out here. Also, Judy, you were saying this earlier about defending drops. Like, it's just closer to get up to here to defend a drop if it's here. Whereas if it's out here, it's faster to mobilize, I guess. But it also decreases the army, or the distance between you and the Terran army, right? So if the Terran's here and your rally's here, and he starts moving, you have this much less time in terms of movement of the Terran army to rebind and like move everything. So if you're really fast, it's not really a consideration, right? Like you just do this, 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 and you have 4 control groups. Whereas if you're slow, it's gonna probably be like this, 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 this. So like you might like lose some games if you have it out here. I think this is much more of like an advanced Zerg thing, and I'm not really 100% sure on all of the considerations that they take into it. I really don't think about that much because I don't think it has that much of an impact. But I always just have it right in front of the Sunkens or like that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's my I don't know what I think about rallies on Fighting Spirit. But yeah, I know a lot of good Zergs do it out here too.
Okay.
Who dares to disturb this voice chat?
Okay, so
Just you.
let's start talking about how to move your army as Zerg. So you have these 4 control groups, or 3 in Boba's case, if you're just using 1, 2, 3.
Mm-hmm.
It's convenient to just move them all to one point, right? And lots of Zergs do this because it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, 5A. But again, thinking about concaves, right? So Zerg attacking from one angle sucks, like, cause all the Zerglings are gonna get stuck. Or let's talk about a different kind of situation. So like, let's say the Terran or Protoss army is like right here. If you attack move into this from that one angle, it's just one angle, right? So this is a suboptimal attack because all your Zerglings are getting caught and they're not really doing a whole lot. So, and that's just like, because in a crisis situation, sometimes you have to do that, and it's not a big deal, but it's not optimal. So if you move your, and your units will get like caught on each other. So what good Zergs will do is they'll flutter their units out so that they're not all grouped up like this. So, you know, like when you guys are containing Protosses in ZVP, or if you're just like sitting outside a ramp waiting for him to push out here, the optimal angle that you would want is you would want to attack from the right in, and then from the corners up, and then from the bottom up as well. And you'll see on the stream when I do the indication. But because you want those angles of attack, like just leave your army in those positions naturally. So at that point you're just like control group 1 up here, 2 here, 3 here, and then 4 here. And then let me get my and then if you want to attack, it's that much easier. So let's talk about attacking from this kind of an optimal angle. Well, it's not optimal because you're only getting like half of your concave, but in this, like if we're attacking an army coming out here, this is the perfect kind of attack that you would want with Zerglings. And that makes sense, right? Because you get the maximum amount of surface area without with the minimum running time. So you're running directly into the maximum surface area, which is what you want. Okay. So let's move into the next problem that Zerg has, right? Which is when Protoss or Terran starts moving out here, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 bound on Zerglings, but this isn't your whole army, right? Like this is only 4 times 6, whatever that is, 24 supply. So out of our 200 army, we are controlling literally like 10% of it, not including drones. So you as a Zerg need to figure out a way to maximize or to overcome this problem, right? So the way that you do it is you have your units set up in a good concave like this, and then the other units that come behind this concave, the concave isn't as important because they're just reinforcing to take up the slots of where units die. So like, if you think about it like this, where like you're gonna be coming in here, once this Zergling dies, there's a gap here, which will be filled by any Zergling running back in. Same with these two. So another Zergling will come up here, and then another Zergling will come up here. So once you get the initial concave, you've already bridged the gap between you and the Terran or the Protoss, and your Zerglings have the correct concave. So at that point, you're good to go. So the way that you solve it is you wait, like you don't send these units in first. These are the last units that you send in. So you have your other rally points. So you have all these drones and overlords, which are perfect Zerg attack units, and you select them. You don't hotkey them like I just did. You leave them as dumb units. This is the other one. And then you just select, you box, and you click out whatever you want, and then you attack move, right? You attack move all these two, and ideally, you want them all to arrive here at the same time, so that there's not like a huge amount of
delay.
Yeah, a delay. So you get them all to hit at the same time, and it looks like you're commanding all the army at once, and they move in this concise line, right?
Right.
There you go.
There you go. So that's how you control big armies. But you have to hit every control group, right? So you want all of these already split up into little balls too. You know, and that's why F4 and F3 are really important, because it really accentuates doing that.
Yeah, because you can just cycle back, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you can like do this.
Then more, yep.
Yeah. So it's just really conducive to doing it. It's good. So that's kind of army control. So let's talk next about another topic I think is of use to you guys as new Zergs, which is using spellcasters in your army. So defilers are obviously super important. You can't get by without using them. Same with lurkers.
At our level, you'd be surprised.
Okay, so we have our spellcaster units here, right? We get queens up here too. So everyone is represented. So you have defilers, lurkers, and Zerglings. And this is a pretty normal composition. So in terms of getting mana for defilers quickly, you want to be very careful that you don't do this and accidentally click on a defiler. And that always happens when you have units kind of like this, and you're like, oh, like I'm stressed out, blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to click the Zergling, oops, oh, I clicked the button correctly. And you're like, oops, I hit this defiler, there goes however much gas a defiler costs, 150. And especially if it's a fully loaded defiler that you just killed too. So like,
Yeah.
so you really want to have your Zerglings kind of apart, and you want to be careful when you're doing it with your defilers, like, and you don't want to hit Ultralisks too, because they have huge hitboxes, and that's common. I was watching this Jaedong replay, and he was in a battle where he had no units but Ultralisks and defilers, and he thought it was economic, like, it was strong enough economically where he could sack two Ultralisks for defiler energy. So he killed 2 Ultras with his defiler and then used it to swarm to save the rest of them. So I mean, at points you can do it, obviously, if Jaedong's doing it, but like, obviously you want to use Lings because they're the cheapest unit that you can use consume on.
And you considering Ultralisk, you're pretty much BMing everyone. I'm saying that they're so bad and they shouldn't win.
Yeah. Alright, so... Fuck, I killed all my... Okay, here's some more. Alright, so... The same kind of consideration in terms of getting your spread applies to defilers. So again, let's talk about attacking this 12 o'clock base. So let's get our units into a spread. And you can just use the mini-map for this, like you just 1 click, 2 click, 3 click, 4 click, and then it spreads them out a little bit. Okay. So obviously you want to send your one group in first here because it has the defilers in it, and you want your you don't want your defilers there last. So if you send them last, let's see. So if I gotta send one last, so 2, 3, 4, 1. Think about the slaughter that's happening here while the defilers aren't there, and and then they arrive, and then it's like, all right, well, here's your swarm.
It's too late.
Yeah, I mean, you already lost half your army, so you want to send them in first, but not like you don't want to be like, all right, I'm like gonna move them in a separate control group because tanks will snipe from them. Like there has to be Zerglings there to soak, but
yeah,
it can't be the last control group to go in for this exact reason. Like you'll lose all your lings if you do that.
Probably. Me and Boba's biggest issue is getting there, and the defilers fucking way too behind. Too late.
Right,
like
and I mean,
common.
It just comes with time, but like,
yeah, just to get the timing perfect, right?
Yeah.
Not too far ahead, far behind.
There's I have a downloaded practice map for using for practicing with defilers.
Yeah, I mean, like it'll probably definitely help your play, but like you just get it from normally playing too.
Yeah.
So how do you guys control your lurkers? If you like, say you have like a control group of lurkers with this army too. So we'll consider these 2 to be 12. Do you guys do anything special, or do you just not have them on hockey, or what's your plan of action?
Lurkers only, and they're always on hockey. I would
why
say.
not group a couple Timbits and Zerglings?
Because
then use
if you do this, you can't burrow them.
Or alt to separate the workers when you want to burrow them.
During a fight? Like you want to move them in and then like control click and then burrow them?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same reason why you don't control group tanks with medic and marine.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
like you need to have
keep...
it quick enough to siege up, and like you also want them in different positions than the Zerglings sometimes. So like you want them in their own control group because, like, say you have all these Zerglings and you're playing against a Terran, or not a Terran, a Protoss, I guess, and then like you move up to burrow them, and then you burrow them, but all these are gonna die. Like you want your unit, you want your army together and your lurkers separate because there's different considerations for where you're deploying your lurkers. So, but how do you like? So you guys hockey them? Do you just like you have them okay. So here's my point. If you have a really active group of units, it should be the easiest thing that you can select in your hotkeys, right? So so if you have these defilers, these should be on 1, right? But personally, how I solve this problem is I have my lurkers always on 1. So if I have lurkers at all and I'm using them in my control groups, I'll have any amount of lurkers on 1, and then I'll have my Zerglings and spellcasters on 2, and then I'll have pure units on 3 and 4. And my rationale behind that is, if I'm attack moving 1, 2, 3, 4, I sometimes like fuck up and don't send 3 and or 4, just because like it's quick to click, but I will always send 1 and 2 because I'm so practiced doing it from when I was a worse player. So like you want to consider that. It's the same with like mutas, right? When you're controlling your mutas, you never want to click the wrong hotkey. Like, are my mutas even still alive? I don't even know. No, because I killed them all with Scourge, right? Fuck. Yeah. Okay, so imagine there's Marines and mutas here. If I'm like looking away macroing, and the Marines come up on my mutas, I never want to miss my hotkey to move them away on the minimap. Like, if we pretend these are mutas, I don't want to be like, oh, what fucking hotkey are my mutas on? You want them to be on the easiest hotkey and the most responsive hotkey, which is probably 1.
Well,
that's where I put all mine on.
Yeah, the most critical unit, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like the most critical at that point in the game, right?
Yeah.
Same with lurkers. Like lurkers, I don't know. I just like them on 1. The only consideration for having lurkers on 1 is, 1, you lose a control group of units, of like pure combat units. So lurkers aren't really combat units in that you're not like moving them around a whole lot. Like you're just moving them and then burrowing them, and then they're like set and forget, right? You just leave them there, and they perform optimally without you like using them. So there, I think I could see an argument for not using lurkers or not binding your lurkers, because in like Zerg vs Protoss, you're not moving them a whole ton, especially if you're in a contain. So you can always just like use them, bind them, and then rebind to like a different group. So like it's not like, I don't know. And that might be getting too in depth, but like what I'm trying to say is like you don't have to always bind your lurkers, because if you think about it, you're not using them all the time, and when you're using them, it's not like a critical point. Like you're just like you're unburrowing them and repositioning them. It's not like, oh fuck, I need to move my whole army and attack. Like also they're huge units, so you can easily just control click on them while they're moving, and they're not that fast, so it's easy to get a hold of all of them compared to Zerglings where like they're really fucking fast, so it's hard to like control click. So that's another consideration. I think that's like pretty much all I had in terms of like Zerg, just like general mechanics and control. I think that's pretty much everything. The most useful thing is going to be splitting up the rally points for sure, in terms of using the control click, and then like knowing how to do all this shit and using shits correctly. Like once you guys get used to this, you're gonna get so much fucking like Zerg is just gonna be so much more comfortable to use, because this rally point is such like a huge like it's still a problem for Terran and Protoss, but because all Zerg hatcheries rally to the same place, and like you get Overlords, drones, Zerglings, like you get such a wide variety of units here that you're going to be splitting them up at such like drones go here, Overlords go here, Zerglings go here. Like it's just something that you run into every game. So I think knowing that will make it so much easier for you guys.
Okay.
How are you guys feeling? Do you want to keep like? Should we go into build orders a little bit, or are you tired or what?
I'm good.
I'm good for whatever.
There's lots of info. Let me digest.
Yeah.
With these like hour-long lectures.
Yeah, I always do this, but it's recorded, so you guys can always go back and look at it too. So that's better than
at least
the
you have
other.
a ball of the lecture.
Yeah, I know. I should have done the earlier ones, but I just figured out how to record it on Twitch. So
And now you gave all the secrets to the other team. Oh shit! I just realized that.
Well, I mean, whatever. Like the meat and potatoes of like this is just mechanics. So I mean, any 18 Zerg should probably like. If good Zergs don't know this, then I don't know what to say. This is like Zerg 101. If you don't do that and you play, it's like impossible to play. So this isn't like a huge problem. So I just want to talk a little bit about build orders, and then we can end it. So Dark Matter, who's a Terran on our team, earlier today said something really insightful, and that was that he thought that StarCraft as a game is a lot about like contesting attention. So kind of similar to what you were saying earlier, Jody, about the Zealot in your base. Like if he can take your attention off of stuff while his attention isn't being taken away from stuff, then you lose more because you have to like you make more mistakes than he does, right? So it's kind of a form of damage, right? Like you're not necessarily killing units, but you're distracting the other player, and if he's a bad player, it makes him make mistakes. So it is damage, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a really insightful point, and as lower level players, that should definitely play into your builds that you do. So it's really easy to watch someone like Jaedong play and look at his builds and be like, damn, that's so cool. Like I really want to use 3-hatch Muta in my Zerg vs Terrans because Muta Micro is cool. But the thing you need to consider when you're at like, I don't know, 100 or less APM, or 150 or less, I would even say, is when you're microing your mutas, one, they're not going to be that effective, so your build's going to be kind of weaker, and two, your attention is just going to be so devoted to the mutas that your build is going to suffer as a result of it. So it's difficult as a lower level player to execute builds like that and win. like you can still do it, but your win-loss is going to be really low because you're just not suited to that, like you don't have the attention resources to execute that kind of a build, you know? And that's nothing like against you guys as players, it's just being pragmatic, like you don't have the APM to spend to execute.
Right.
So similar, okay, so Jody and I were talking about ZVP earlier, where he was saying that he didn't like one-gate attacks because it was so, it's a difficult situation for Zerg because Zealots are really easy to control at low levels, and Zerglings are really difficult to control just because of, like, they get bunched up and shit. So if you're not good with them, like, you just get slaughtered by Zealots. So as a result, I was telling Jody that he should, or we were talking about 9-pool gas speedlings, because it somewhat counters that build. So it's a little bit worse from an economic perspective, but if you guys consider it from your attention perspective, or from your APM considerations, it's much better because you only have to deal with one base, whereas the Protoss might be overextending himself from an attention perspective and trying to tech into 2 or 3 base, right? So, like how we were talking about with all the rallies, right? It's going to take you guys to get used to dealing with having 2 separate rallies and like being able to cut up and rebind 2 separate rallies worth of units, right? So, as a result, I'm not saying you shouldn't be practicing that because you're still going to run into it in your games, but if you want to like win a game, you should play to your strengths. And if your strength at the low level isn't APM and attention, you should play to that fact, like, because it's what differentiates you as a player. So if you go 9-pool speedling, you can just abuse the fact that sometimes he'll just lose if he goes forge first and his build order's late, and you can just kill him because he's not as good as like a normal Protoss, right? Also, if he does go 1-gate aggression, and you have 9-pool with speedling, it really negates a lot of the issues that you have microing because your Zerglings are already faster at that point anyways, and you already have more out. So you're not going to like lose as many units because you're doing a build that's more like oriented against a build that you have a lot of trouble against. Like, it might be better from a game theory perspective if you're a perfect Zerg to 3-hatch every game in ZVP. But you guys aren't perfect Zergs, and you're not playing against perfect Protosses. So you might as well play to your strengths and their weaknesses. So that's why I kind of would suggest like picking easier builds like that.
Right.
And kind of just like splitting out from there. So like you can 9-pool gas in like any matchup too. So like ZVZ, ZVT, it's kind of rough, but ZVZ and ZVP you can always do it. You can 2-base in ZVT, right? I mean, even if you're not 3-hatch mutating, when I was around your levels, I would always open up 3-hatch Lurker instead, because it does a similar thing. It's a bit worse, but it's way easier to control because it's just Lurkers instead of Mutalisks.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just kind of like thinking about things like that when you're going into your games, you know? And that's all I really wanted to say. So, I mean, I don't even know why I got in the game for this, but I would
it's all good.
Yeah, I would suggest trying out just 9-pool speeding, and then like you'll just destroy everyone, and you'll get so good at doing it that your knowledge of the 9-pool speed build is gonna, like, you're gonna start seeing similarities between 9-pool speed and how like it interacts or how it differs from going 12-hatch first, right? In terms of like how your economy will function. So like you're gonna have 9. Well, no, I guess you'll have 9 drones. So you'll have 9 drones, but those 9 drones with the larva of 1 hatch obviously functions differently than 2 hatches with 12 drones, you know? But eventually you'll start feeling out the differences between the two, and as a result, like, that knowledge of the different situations really helps later on when you get in a weird situation where you're 12 hatching and there's a 1-gate aggression and you lose a few drones and you're like, well, I'm not at a point that I thought I would be in my initial build order consideration, but I lost a few drones, and I can't just fucking leave the game. So I gotta deal with this awkward situation of being 4 drones short. But you have so much experience in other games where you just 9-pooled that you're used to playing off 9 drones instead of 12 drones. So
Right.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Can you do a quick
9-pool?
yeah, just let's say Protoss is top right.
Yeah, sure.
Just to see, I know what you mean, but see if I'm doing something wrong.
So 9-pool is a pretty straightforward build, and that's
Yeah.
go to 9 drones.
And I guess after you do pop out the links, getting the timing of the natural would be
Right.
key for us. Because like, I don't know if when to exactly get it, how much to drone up, and like.
Right. I mean, it changes a lot on the situation of the game, and it's not really that important to have it like perfectly down at your level, but I can give you some kind of like general considerations. So you get your you get this on 9, then you have 1 extra supply, so you get a drone here.
Yeah.
Then you get your extractor. So your extractor is next when you get 50.
Yeah.
And you get another drone here. Again, sending it to empty because you need all your money if you're doing an aggressive build like this because the timing is important. And then at 100, you get an Overlord.
Yeah.
And then when this finishes, you send 3. And then you send, it's ZVP, right? So you send your Overlords both to I mean, we can talk about Overlord placement too, but... So once this hatches, you get the Zerglings, and then you send a drone too to scout, because you don't know where he is, so you need to be able to land your build. And then at 88 gas, you pull off gas. Well, no, fuck, I messed it up. You do it before 3 sets of gas, so you can get your speed up at time, in time. And then you get...
Okay, you said... What was the timing of the drone scout?
Yeah, I mean, I can just type it up for you too. But the idea is you send a drone before your lings are out so that you know where to send them. Like, ideally, I would have already scouted to see if there was a Protoss here. Like, let's say he's in the bottom right. So I know that he's not here because my Overlord's here. And I know that he's not here because I have a drone down here, right? So I would pull this drone back, and then I'd know to send my Zerglings down here. Unless he's doing 1 base, but if he's 1 basing, then it doesn't matter. Because you can't do damage with the Zerglings anyways. So you send, you take your expansion once you have around 200 minerals banked. And you're macroing fine.
Okay, so 2 drones behind it. Well, you got 3 drones behind it.
Yeah, I don't make another pair of Zerglings after the first 6, because I think it's redundant.
Yeah, because ultimately...
You're either doing damage or you're not doing damage at that point. So.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Okay. 5 links kill a cannon, right? So...
Yeah, and you can like just run by if necessary or target probes or whatever. Or like just kill him if it's like a 2-gate and he's proxying or something like that. So that's why I would definitely suggest doing this. So I mean, this is kind of the follow-up. Where like... Actually, I wouldn't get gas here. I would stay off of gas. And then I would take my 3rd too. Because I told you I would just go straight into like a normal ZVP game after this.
Okay, so...
Not fuck up my Overlords too. I can send you a perfect replay after this.
Okay. And then you get your 3rd right away.
Yeah, I would get my 3rd before I even started harvesting gas.
Yeah. Okay.
And then once I get my 3rd up, I would do this and get my layer up. And then I can show you like my basic hatchery placement too for ZVP. Because it's different than my ZVP one.
So your 3rd.
Yeah.
Are you always getting it at a natural in another base, or
if it's
like,
fighting spirit, yeah. If it's fighting spirit, I do, and I can show you why. This is a really interesting thing.
I always get my third at the top there,
Right.
but it doesn't help you out later in the game.
Right, and some Zergs do it because if it's closer to you, you can defend it more aggressively, but on Fighting Spirit, you're giving up so much by not doing what I do. I'll show you why. Okay, so again, 5, 6, this is 7 in terms of hotkeys. Oh, we can also talk about Overlords. So, you guys know the Overlord timings, right? So if you have 2 hatcheries, you want to get your Overlord on 16. So if you get it on 16 exactly, then you won't get supply capped at all when you're building drones. And then when you have 3 hatcheries, you want it on 24. And then you won't get supply capped. So those are just the 2, like just natural numbers that you need to remember for 3 base Zerg play, is 16 and 24. So I need to make sure to get a Overlord now. Spire. So again, you're waiting for the Overlord to make. And then this hatchery is late, otherwise it wouldn't, because I'd have 1 extra supply from that hatchery, right? So. Okay, I want to show you guys, once this comes out, so I get my 9th, or my, what is it, 5th hatchery, I put my 5th hatchery here, wherever it goes, the closest it can go to this cliff, and this is 9. And again, in ZVP, you want your Spire up before anything else, pretty much, because you need it out to kill Corsairs and deny scouting.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
But not at the cost of econ. So this is where I put my 8th, or this is Control Group 8, this is Control Group 9, and then again the split rallies for better concaves. And then I put my Hydra Den here. And I put my Evo chamber down here. And I will show you why I do that. So you get your Spire up, and you start working on Overlord speed, you take your natural gas, you start droning up hardcore.
So 34 is getting.
Well, yeah, you get your gas around 35, so you build like a shitload of things around 30. You get your, this hatch is like before, kind of around the Spire timing, but you get the Evo chamber, the Hydra Den, and this hatchery right around 35, as well as Overlord speed. But they all come out at the same time, so you gotta prioritize it so you can still get Scourge out as well. If you're doing the build properly. Alright, so so you guys know the Protoss build, right? Where they have like +1 attack on their zealots and speed on their zealots. And then it's like a timing that lots of Protosses like to hit. Well, if you position your shit like this, you can just use 1 creep colony, or you can build more if you're uncomfortable. And then the zealots, like, they have a difficult time getting in here to attack the creep colony. So you can put, like, Zerglings here. You can also, like, maneuver eggs around here so that you can, like, reduce the surface area. But in terms of it being a defensive position, you can defend this super economically such that the Protoss can't attack into it, so that you can make a shitload of drones instead of combat units. So it lets you get really ahead of it just on Fighting Spirit. And on other maps there are other wall-offs, but this one's kind of the easiest one. And then you can take your next base up here, because this is pretty much safe until he gets, like, Dragoons, pretty much.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And then, like, you just pump off. You can make so many Hydralisks this way. And then, so basically, if you're doing a 5-hatch Hydra bust, you would get these 5 up, these 5 hatches up, and you would start upgrading out of your Hydra Den, and you could get +1 like I did here, and then you get Overlord speed, and you just make a shitload of Hydras, and once you have 3 or 4 control groups, you just go and, like, bust the main. And if you can't bust it, then you just back off, contain, and take your...
Control the third, right?
Yeah, if you can control the third, that's good. Sometimes he'll push out with Storm and take it anyways, so you don't want to lose a whole ton of army.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of keep him on 3 bases while you're taking your, what is this, your 5th, and then like your 6th would be up here. And then you start going to, like you get your 2 more Evo chambers, your Queen's Nest, and you get like, you can get Mutas too if you want, to snipe Templar. And then, since we were talking about control groups, this one is 0, right, because this is my 6th hatchery. And then I would put F2 up here, and then F4 here, and then I would just use F2 to make out of these. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, and then F2, F4, F3, and then I would rebind this hatchery, the 6th one, this would be 8, and then I would just manually click on this one to make out of it. And then same for this one, I would unbind this, which is 9. So this would be 9, this would be 8, and these 2 would be unbound. So I know that was a ton of information, but in terms of the build order consideration stuff, do you guys understand? Like, you shouldn't be going for the most technical builds, like go for the builds that you're comfortable with, and eventually, once you understand the race more, you'll kind of naturally gravitate towards the more powerful builds that are a bit more difficult.
Right on, man.
So that's our first B-team dedicated lesson.
Wow.
I know it's pretty in-depth, but
How much?
I hope it was helpful.
How much do you want me to send on PayPal?
It's all good, dude. It's free.
No. Okay.
But yeah, so I mean, we can end the stream now because that was pretty much it.